Wow, I made it.
Yeah.
I made it, okay. Today we're going to start reading the first Gosho in volume 7 of Teachings for Victory, Earthly Desires Are Enlightenment. Now this is a very, very profound Gosho. You can read it more superficially and still see great value in your understanding of it, but at the deepest level it's a Gosho that Buddhas understand, okay? Because the Daishonin is qualifying certain things that are absolute cornerstones of his teaching in this Gosho, all right? So I'm going to read the whole Gosho. I'll go to volume 1 of the Writings of Nichiren Daishonin. It's on page 317. Earthly Desires Are Enlightenment. The background starts on page 319, so go to 319. I'm going to read the whole Gosho, and then I'm not going to read the gray boxes because they have already been included, and I'll just go right into the lecture. And then I'll pull out the supplemental material for the lecture itself. Background on page 319. In the 4th month of the 9th year of Brunei, Shijo Kingo traveled from Kamakura to Sato Island to visit Nichiren Daishonin. Kingo was a samurai who served the Emma family, a branch of the ruling Hojo clan. The journey to Sato was a long, arduous one, involving a boat trip across the Sea of Japan, and required that he absent himself from his duties in Kamakura for more than a month. In the 5th month of the same year, soon after Shijo Kingo returned to Kamakura, Nichiren Daishonin sent him this letter. It was written in gratitude for the samurai's visit. In the letter, the Daishonin explains the power of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in terms of such profound Buddhist principles as the fusion of reality and wisdom, Kyochi Myogo, and earthly desires are enlightenment, bonus oku bodai. Although Hinayana Buddhism teaches that earthly desires must be eliminated to attain enlightenment, Mahayana, and particularly the Lotus Sutra, teaches that earthly desires are one with and inseparable from enlightenment. The reason is that both are the workings or expression of life itself, and thus are the same in their source. Okay, do you understand? Their source. Nichiren Daishonin teaches that when one bases one's life on Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, earthly desires work naturally for one's own and others' happiness. The great power of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is inherently positive and creative, directs the great energy of one's earthly desires toward happiness and value for all. Thus, when one chants the Daimoku, earthly desires are enlightenment. Until his near execution at Tatsunokuchi in the 9th month of 1271, the Daishonin had assumed the role of Bodhisattva superior practices, the votary whose appearance is predicted in the Lotus Sutra. He had spent all his time teaching the essence of the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and propagating the faith of the teaching of the Buddhism of sowing. After Tatsunokuchi, he revealed his true identity as the Buddha who is one with the supreme law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In this letter, the Daishonin teaches the significance of the Daimoku from the standpoint of the Buddha who opens the way to Buddhahood for all humankind. He first states that it is his great joy to meet persecutions as the votary of the Lotus Sutra because it is the sure way to attain Buddhahood. Let me say that one again. He first states that it is his great joy to meet persecutions as the votary of the Lotus Sutra because it is the sure way to attain Buddhahood. Though the teaching I am now propagating seems limited, it is extremely profound. That is because it goes deeper than the teaching expounded by Tentai Dengyo and others. He reveals that the ultimate law of all Buddhas is none other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So beginning on page 317, Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, here's the Gosho. Earthly desires are enlightenment. This is to Shijo Kingo, okay? I deeply appreciate your visit here and your constant concern over the numerous persecutions that have befallen me. I do not regret meeting with such great persecutions as the votary of the Lotus Sutra. However many times I were to repeat the cycle of birth and death, no life could be as fortunate as this. If not for these troubles, I might have remained in the 3 or 4 evil paths, but now to my great joy, I am sure to sever the cycle of the sufferings of birth and death and attain the fruit of Buddhahood. Now, why would he say that as the opening statement, the first paragraph? He's writing it to who? Who is being persecuted by his Lord, right? What is he saying here then to him? He's basically saying, Shijo, you can look at it any way you want to, but all of the difficulties that I have, I totally embrace, for they reveal my Buddhahood. And you should look at it that way too, even though he doesn't ask him to. That's what he's trying to teach us. All of our difficulties are really reflections of our mission and our responsibility to do Kosen Rufu. We have to become Buddhas in our present form. If whatever we're facing to do that, we ask for through our own behavior. Okay? It's as simple as that. Continuing. Even for spreading the teaching of the theoretical 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, from the first half of the Lotus Sutra, Tentai and Dingyo met with hatred and jealousy. In Japan, it was transmitted from Dingyo to Gishin, Incho, Jikaku, and others, and spread. The 18th chief priest of the Tendai school was the great teacher Jie, and he had many disciples. Among them were 4 named Dana, Eshin, Soga, and Zinyu. The teaching also was divided into 2. The administrator of priest Dana transmitted the doctrinal studies, while the supervisor of priest Eshin studied the meditative practices. Thus, the doctrinal studies and meditative practice are like the sun and moon. Doctrinal studies are shallow, while meditative practices are deep. Why would that be? The doctrinal studies are there to allow you to accomplish the depth of the meditative practices by understanding things you wouldn't otherwise. But just understanding them isn't going to get you there. That's why they're shallow. Okay? Doctrinal studies are shallow while meditative practices are deep. Thus, the teaching expounded by Dana is broad but shallow, while the teaching of Eshin is limited but deep. Though the teaching I am now propagating seems limited because it's just Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The precept of the diamond chalice is all there is to it, baby. Okay? It is extremely profound because it must be extremely profound to be free of all the hubris of all the other bullshit. You don't, he continues, that is because it goes deeper than the teaching expounded by Tentai, Dengyo, and others. It is the 3 important matters in the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching, the 3 great secret laws hidden in the depths of the Juryo chapter. Practicing only the 7 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo seems limited, but since they are the master of all the Buddhas of the 3 existences, the teacher of all the bodhisattvas in the 10 directions, and the guide that enables all living beings to attain the Buddha way, it is profound. The sutra states the wisdom of the Buddha is infinitely profound and immeasurable. It refers to the Buddhas here in the sense of all Buddhas throughout the 10 directions in the 3 existences. From the Thus Come One, Mahavro Chana of the True Word School, and Amida of the Pure Land School, to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of all schools and all sutras. All Buddhas of the past, future, and the present Thus Come One Shakyamuni. And the sutra speaks of the wisdom of all those Buddhas. So he says, what is meant by this wisdom? It is the entity of the true aspect of all phenomena. Do you understand what that is? Okay. It is the entity of the true aspect of all phenomena and the 10 factors of life that lead all beings to Buddhahood. What then is that entity? It is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. A commentary. I'm sorry, it's going to be tough for me today. This is a very profound Gosho. A commentary states that the profound principle of the true aspect is the originally inherent Myoho Renge-kyo. We're talking about, when he says originally inherent, we're talking about the original state, which all things share. It is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We learn that the true aspect of all phenomena is also the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and many treasures, seated together in the treasure tower. All phenomena corresponds to many treasures, and the true aspect corresponds to Shakyamuni. Those are the two elements of reality and wisdom. Okay? That's Kyochi Myogo. They're represented on the Gohonzon. That's why they always used to tell us, see if you can fuse with the Gohonzon. Fusion with the Gohonzon was Kyochi Myogo, right? Many treasures is reality. Shakyamuni is wisdom. It is the enlightenment that reality and wisdom are two, and yet they are not two. Do you understand? Okay? These are teachings of prime importance. Is everybody with me? Do you understand how they're two, but they're not two? They're not identical, but they never exist outside of each other. Okay? So they're always together. They're not the same thing, but they're always together. These are teachings of prime importance. These are also what is called earthly desires, our enlightenment, and the sufferings of birth and of death and nirvana. Because understanding what I just talked about only comes from life, only comes from your endeavor to be the Buddha in your present form. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is what that is, during the physical union of a man and woman is indeed what is called earthly desires or enlightenment. So here he's talking about having sexual intercourse and saying, chanting while you do it, his earthly desires are enlightenment. And the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Why? Because everything that is in the phenomenal realm is that in its reality. Okay? He's just like going way out in left field to go, this isn't about sexuality or morality. This is about the true aspect of all phenomena. The sufferings of birth and death or nirvana exist only in realizing that the entity of life throughout its cycle of birth and death is neither born nor destroyed. So Kuan is in play, period. All right? The original state is actually functionally present continuously, eternally. The Universal Worthy Sutra states, without either cutting off earthly desires, like they obviously must not have to do that if they can do it during sex, or separating themselves from the five desires. So I don't have to become some sort of a monk in order to attain Buddhahood in my present form. They can purify their senses, which the sutra says they must do, which the Daishonin explains in the orally transmitted teachings we do through just the course of our chanting Daimoku, and wipe away all their offenses. Great concentration and insight says the ignorance and dust of desires are enlightenment, and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. The lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra says, at all times I think to myself, how can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha by realizing they already have that body within the realm of their identity as living beings? The Expedient Means chapter says, the characteristics of the world are constantly abiding. Everything is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Surely such statements refer to these principles. Thus, what is called the entity is none other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It is such an august and precious Lotus Sutra that in past existences I put under my knees, despised, scowled upon and discussed and failed to believe in. In one way or another, I maliciously ridiculed those who, studying the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, taught them to even one person and carried on the life of the law. In addition, do you notice what he's saying? I maliciously ridiculed those who, studying the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, taught them to even one person and carried on the life of the law. So he's equating spreading the teaching on to even one person, being continuing the life of the law. Do you understand that, right? All right. In addition, I did everything I could to hinder people from embracing the sutra by asserting that they could set it aside for a while because though it might be suitable for practice in their next lifetime, it would be too difficult to practice in this one. Slanderous acts such as those have brought on the many severe persecutions I have suffered in my lifetime. Because I once disparaged the Lotus Sutra, the highest of all the sutras, I am now looked down on, and my words go unheeded. The simile and parable chapter states that other people will neither concern themselves with one nor have sympathy for one, even though one sincerely tries to be friendly with them. Nevertheless, he says, so regardless of all of this, now let's bring it down to the reality of you and me, Shijo. Nevertheless, you became a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Why? How can he say you became a votary of the Lotus Sutra? Because a votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law is someone who chants Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and upholds the teachings of Nichiren. Okay? So he's qualifying. You've done what's necessary for you to attain Buddhahood in your present form. Dude, you're already the Buddha. You are a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? You're nothing less than that. Okay? Nevertheless, you became a votary of the Lotus Sutra. And as a result, you suffered severe persecutions as a result of being a votary of the Lotus Sutra. All right? That means that you've protected the law. Okay? And you came to my assistance in the Teacher of the Law chapter of the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha states that he will magically conjure and send the four kinds of believers, monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen, for the sake of the teachers of the law. If the laymen, now again, for the sake of the teachers of the law, plural. It's not just one. It's all of us that attain that realization that we're already Buddhas exactly as we are. That's all it takes for you to be a teacher. Even if you only teach one person. You've manifested something that gives life to the law. Do you understand? If the layman mentioned here does not mean you, who does it refer to? You have not only heard the law, but have taken faith in it. And since then have followed it without turning aside, no matter how many obstacles you've received. How wondrous, how extraordinary that couldn't have discouraged you and you'd maintained faith. If that is the case, if you've gone through that gauntlet and sustained faith, then can there be any doubt that I am the teacher of the law of the Lotus Sutra? Because I must have passed something on to you that allowed you to sustain yourself just like I have. Perhaps I also remember the envoy of the Thus Come One, for I am carrying out the Thus Come One's work. I have nearly spread the 5 characters of the Daimoku that were entrusted to Bodhisattva superior practices when the 2 Buddhas were seated together within the treasure tower. Does this not mean that I am an envoy of Bodhisattva superior practices? Moreover, following me, you as a votary of the Lotus Sutra have told others of this law. What else could this be but the transmission of the law? This is what will carry on into the future, he says in another Gosho. Carry through with your faith in the Lotus Sutra. You cannot strike fire from flint if you stop halfway. Bring forth the great power of faith and be spoken of awe by the people of Kamakura, both high and low, or by all of the people of Japan, as Shijo Kingo of the Lotus School. Even a bad reputation will spread far and wide. A good reputation will spread even farther, particularly if it is a reputation for devotion to the Lotus Sutra. Explain all this to your wife, too, and work together like the sun and moon, a pair of eyes, or the 2 wings of a bird. With the sun and moon, could there be a path of darkness? With a pair of eyes, no doubt you will see the faces of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions. With a pair of wings, you will surely fly in an instant to the treasure land of tranquil light. I will write in more detail on another occasion with my deep respect, Nichiren, and I love reading all this to you because now President K is going to qualify, just like I know, what he's really saying here when he's talking about these things that sound like heaven or some other realm where we're going to all hang. He's talking about the 9th consciousness, but we'll get into that when we get into the lecture itself. All right, so going to, and I'm going to read that because I know you guys know that, but I don't know that everybody knows that. All right, so on page 3, lecture. Tetsuburo Makaguchi, the founding Soka Gakkai president, began his practice of Nichiren Buddhism in 1928 when he was 57 years old. He later described his state of mind at the time. When I made that great decision and finally committed myself to practicing Nichiren Buddhism, I came to fully comprehend and appreciate in my daily life the Daishonen's words, when the skies are clear, the ground is illuminated. Similarly, when one knows the Lotus Sutra, one understands the meaning of all worldly affairs, from the object of devotion for observing the mind on page 376 of WND 1. With an indescribable joy, I completely changed the way I had lived for almost 60 years. He had engaged in a continuing and he had engaged in a continuing intellectual search, persistently and repeatedly considering and attempting to implement a form of education that would enable all children to become happy. That was President Makaguchi's goal from before, when he even started chanting. What he ultimately arrived at was Nichiren Buddhism. As indicated by the passage he cites, when the skies are clear, the ground is illuminated, from the object of devotion for observing the mind, the Daishonin teaches the fundamental law that pervades all phenomena in the universe. It is a teaching that illuminates and leads the way for all philosophies and ideals throughout history. It is the Buddhism of the sun that enables us to dispel the dark clouds of adversity, lead brilliant lives, and confidently win and shine in society. And when he says it is the Buddhism of the sun, he is specifically talking about the Buddhism of the Soka Gakkai. Okay? He's not talking about just chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. He's talking about practicing in the 9 worlds as a Buddha, just as the first 3 presidents have. Okay? That's what he's talking about. It is the Buddhism of the sun. Only that teaching will enable you to dispel those dark clouds of adversity, lead brilliant lives, and confidently win in society. For Mr. Makaguchi, taking faith in Nichiren Buddhism completely changed his way of living, and it constituted an incredibly joyful and important turning point in his life. He said that as a result of Buddhist practice, the anxiety that came from searching in the dark for life's answers completely evaporated, and my inborn reserve and diffidence disappeared. My goals in life became increasingly grander and loftier, and my fears dwindled. And he added that he set out to realize a bold aspiration. That bold aspiration was none other than the creation of the system of value creating society, which crystallizes his educational ideas and whose publication marked the founding of the Soka Kyoiku Gakkai, the forerunner of the Soka Gakkai. True faith serves as a driving force to realize both joy and a bold aspiration. Because you got to have a bold aspiration. What's the bold aspiration you got to have? What's the bold aspiration that you got to have? I emphasize it over and over and over again. The desire to achieve Buddhahood in your present form. If you already know that, then you already have. But that's the bold aspiration, because that is a bold aspiration. All right? A life of great joy in which all our desires are fulfilled. Continuing on page 4, middle of the first column. Nichiren Buddhism is a source of light that enables us to overcome the universal sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, establish within us a state of genuine happiness, and lead lives in which all our desires are fulfilled. Every day I receive reports brimming with joy and fresh determinations from our members throughout Japan and around the world. They share how they have introduced others to Buddhism, how they are walking the path to happiness together, and how they are praying for the growth of their friends. Nothing gives me greater delight than hearing about the wonderful victories of my precious fellow members. The accounts of their personal dramas always deeply move me. At the same time, the voices of new members are now appearing in growing numbers in every region, also echo vibrantly in my ears. Their experiences in faith are certain to lead to still more people joining the SGI. The joy of faith is the driving force for the development of our movement. Okay? So it's all about all of us doing in our daily life the things that allow us to show actual proof. Right? Second, the Soka Gakkai president Josei Toda declared, once you take faith in the Gohonzon, the resulting benefit will clearly appear in your life. You will without a doubt surmount all life's sufferings, transforming negative karma and overcoming problems such as poverty, illness, and family discord. So you're going to change that suffering into, you're going to flip it. This is all about flipping. So it's not about waiting for your next lifetime, because you're just a flip away from it being completely different than it is in the state of delusion. All right? Through embracing the supreme teaching of the mystic law, we can definitely win in life and society. That's what transforming is. Transforming is flipping it, okay? Through embracing the supreme teaching of the mystic law, we can definitely win in life and society. We can lead the best of all possible lives. All possible lives. So what is he really saying there? We can live the best lives of anybody in the world, in the universe? Yeah, only if we make the causes to do so. Okay, so the best possible life is the best possible life we've been able to create through the karma that we've accumulated up to this lifetime. All right, so that we can lead the best of all possible lives. So it's not going to be the same life for everybody. Everybody's paying for their own way, so to speak. If you understand what I'm trying to the point I'm trying to make. Yes. In this chat, he's not promising Candyland, is what I'm saying. We have the ability to lead the best of all possible lives. In this chapter, I will discuss Nichiren's letter to Shijo Kingo titled Earthly Desires Their Enlightenment. Let us study together the way of practice for clearly manifesting the benefit of the mystic law in this lifetime, and how to put Buddhism into action in our daily lives. Continuing page 4, bottom on second column. Regarding persecution as great joy, which we all have to do. Do you ever feel persecuted? Do you ever see the environment kind of like flare up in your face? If you don't, you're not doing everything right. Okay, difficulty is not a bad thing. Again, in Buddhism, difficulty, especially if you are doing everything you're supposed to do and still you end up with the shits like that, okay? That's very temporary, momentary, and strictly a test for you to break through so that you can reveal your true identity. You can't grow without going through those experiences. If it's always easy, it has nothing to do with Nichiren Buddhism. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So regarding persecution as a great joy, because if you think you're not going to receive persecution in the process of trying to propagate the Buddhism of sowing, I got news for you. The Daishonin says it's part and parcel with the activity. Yeah. All right? I deeply appreciate, from the Gosho, I deeply appreciate your visit here to Sado Island and your constant concern over the numerous persecutions that have befallen me. I do not regret meeting with such great persecutions as the Bodhi Lotus Sutra. So don't feel sorry for me. I sure don't feel sorry for me. That's what he's saying to Shijo Kingo. But don't understand, I really appreciate what you did. Okay? However many times I were to repeat the cycle of birth and death, no life could be as fortunate as this, because I've attained Buddhahood in my present form, and I'm guaranteed to continue to do so. So no matter what I had to go through to get there, now this is how far I had to push to get it. If not for these troubles, I might have remained in the 3 or 4 evil paths. I would have thought I already knew what I didn't know. But now, to my great joy, I am sure to sever the cycle of the sufferings of birth and death and attain the fruit of Buddhahood. Okay? Just like you and me. We should have been able to repeat that as something coming from our own life. We should all feel exactly that same way. Frankly. All right? Page 5, middle of the first column. For the sake of all the people in the latter day, because it's specifically for the people in the latter day. The Daishonin revealed the Daimoku of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the law of universal enlightenment, and literally risked his life to propagate it. So where did the Daimoku come from? Did it come from Nichiren? Did he pull it out of his butt? No, he revealed what had already been in the Lotus Sutra in the Lifespan chapter all along. But it wasn't time yet. And the people that preceded him didn't have the mission of revealing it. And that's the reason why he did reveal it and go through whatever he had to go through in order to reveal it. And that's your job too, because that's what you said you would do. Do you understand? Okay, so all of this is related to you. This isn't a story of Nichiren. This is a story of every one of you if you do what you're supposed to. For the sake of all the people in the latter day, you should consider yourselves just as powerful as Buddhists. Everything you do contributes to Kosen Rufu. That's all the people in the latter day, ultimately. And the revealing of the Daimoku, For the sake of all the people in the latter day, that Daishonin revealed the Daimoku of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the law of universal enlightenment, and literally risked his life to propagate it. Because he battled against all devilish functions, which we must as well, and that inflicted misfortune and suffering on the people, he faced a continuous series of persecutions. In particular, officials of the Kamakura military government sought to have him beheaded at Tatsunokuchi in 1271. When Nichiren survived this attempt on his life, he was exiled to Sado Island, a punishment regarded at that time as the equivalent to a death sentence. He composed this letter during that exile and addressed it to Shijo Kingo, one of his leading disciples in Kamakura. Shijo accompanied the Daishonin during the Tatsunokuchi persecution without a thought for his own safety. He also visited him on Sado and sent messengers to him there. So even though he had a bad temper, he was a pretty cool guy. It goes without saying at the bottom of page 5, first column, it goes without saying that Shijo Kingo was supported throughout all this by his wife, Nichigenyo, who was also a person of strong and steadfast faith. That's the only reason he could leave and go do all those things. All right? Great hardship. So is there a separation between Shijo Kingo and Nichigenyo? No. As far as the Gohonzon is concerned, they are the same thing. They are the same person. Great hardships, top of second column. Great hardships reveal those with genuine faith and who are genuine disciples. Okay? So what that basically says is if you're going through the shits, okay, that's qualifying to you that you are somebody that's been here before. You are somebody that's been here before. You're not a newbie. You're a teacher. You're a teacher of the law, for Christ's sake. Well, not for Christ's sake, for gosh's sake. Okay? Great hardships reveal those with genuine faith and who are genuine disciples. Why? How? Not only because it's prophesized, but we don't quit in the face of that. We are not affected by that. We don't judge our faith on the basis of those experiences. Nichiren Daishonin must have rejoiced at the faith of... you can close the door all the way, and I think that will reduce the amount of sound coming in. Nichiren Daishonin must have rejoiced at the faith of Shijo Kingo, who single-mindedly sought out his teachings and staunchly took action to support and protect him. He openly expresses his gratitude, writing, "I deeply appreciate your constant concern." At the same time, he declares, "I do not regret meeting with such great persecutions, and no life could be as fortunate as this." He further states, "Now, to my great joy, I am sure to sever the cycle of the sufferings of birth and death and attain the fruit of Buddhahood. Everything that has happened is just as the Lotus Sutra described." So he sees his life based on what the Lotus Sutra says will befall the votary. If you view your life on the same basis, then everything the Lotus Sutra says about the votary is saying about you. And of course they will follow in complete sync. And that's why you should have great confidence like the Daishonin. That's where his comes from. Okay, and that's what President Ikeda is explaining here in this paragraph. Everything that has happened to Nichiren is just as the Lotus Sutra describes, and the Daishonin serenely overcomes everything, which we will as well, the harsh criticism, attacks, and even life-threatening persecutions with joy, because you can't be defeated. Such is the lofty life state of the Buddha of the latter day of the law. Now you determine whether you get to enjoy that life state. It's your behavior as a human being that qualifies whether or not that pertains to you personally. Through his example, though, we have an example. He also teaches us the highest way of life so that we can do that and we can also get the same benefit and result. How to live a life of unsurpassed nobility as Buddhists, concerned about the welfare of others as the first and foremost thought in our minds. Establishing a state of absolute happiness on page 5. In a sense, life is a series of difficulties. So as we've just talked about all this stuff, if you're saying, no, I don't have any, okay. He's saying, no, life is a series of difficulties. It's just the space between them that basically kind of determines how you view it. If they're once in a while, it's not so bad. If they're every day, they're much worse than they would be if they were just once in a while, obviously, right? There's still difficulties. In a sense, life for everyone is a series of difficulties. No life is without its problems, but happiness is not merely the absence of suffering. Happiness shines in a life state capable of overcoming any form of suffering or hardship and transforming it into joy. This is a state of genuine fulfillment. This is the ability to advance continuously, always creating value, never daunted by adversity. Buddhism enables us to achieve a better life, a life of complete satisfaction while accumulating treasures of the heart that will endure forever. Boy, that's a loaded paragraph. I got to say it again. He's saying, always, pardon me. What is this going to allow us to do? It is the ability to advance continuously. What is advance continuously? Never giving up to the last moment of our lives. Right? That's how we live. We are never daunted by adversity, always creating value. That's what he's talking about. Buddhism enables us to achieve this better life. You know, a life of complete satisfaction, because no matter how good or how bad from the 9 realm aspect, our 10th world absolutely makes it equal to anybody's best. Everybody's best is the 10th. You can't get better than the 10th world. That's going to take you to the 9th consciousness when you die. While accumulating treasures of the heart that will endure forever. What's that saying then? While creating fortune that will manifest in our future lives over and over and over again, bringing us close to the people that we love over and over and over again, allowing us to be the same Buddha in our daily life over and over and over again. Mr. Toda aptly described this state in which living itself is a joy as absolute happiness. Okay? But it's not absolute happiness like giggle, giggle, giggle all the time. Do you understand? Okay? It's winning, winning, winning. And winning sometimes is too tough for it to be giggle, giggle, giggle. It's very serious shit. It's not pleasant. But you do it because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you must do. How can you teach anybody if you can't do it yourself? There are two kinds of, Mr. Toda aptly described this state in which living itself is a joy, as absolute happiness. He asserted there are two kinds of happiness, absolute happiness and relative happiness. We talked about this all the time in the old days. Yeah. Achieving absolute happiness is the greatest joy in life. It is carrying out one's human revolution. It means attaining Buddhahood in your present form. Okay? Fresh and vigorous faith is the key to becoming happy without fail. But that's fresh and vigorous faith. That means you're always trying as hard as you can. You're not ever relaxing. You're never falling back on what you've already done. You're never retired. With unshakable conviction in this, please share Nichiren Buddhism with others. In modern times, the SGI is the organization whose members have been attaining the fruit or benefit of Buddhahood, to which the Daishonin refers. In other words, that state of absolute happiness. Let me read that again. in modern times. So it isn't like, this is what he's saying has been going on for a while. I don't hear so many people talk this way. But this is what he says. This is what's been going on in Japan for sure. In modern times, the SGI is the organization whose members have been attaining the fruit or benefit of Buddhahood, which was practicing correctly and never stopping, to which the Daishonin refers. In other words, the state of absolute happiness. The starting point of the Soka Gakkai is the mentor-disciple relationship shared by Mr. Makaguchi and Mr. Toda. Both of them fought to defend freedom of religious belief, and in July 1943, Japan's wartime militarist authorities arrested and imprisoned them. Neither, however, showed the least fear or despair. There, the mentor and disciple relationship is between two people, right? It's between two people that were not Nichiren Daishonin, and they weren't priests. They were two regular lay believers. Do you understand? So there's no prerequisite on who does Kosen Rufu. In the starting point of the Soka Gakkai is the mentor-disciple relationship shared by Mr. Makaguchi and Mr. Toda. Both of them fought to defend freedom of religious belief, and in July 1943, Japan's wartime militarist authorities arrested and imprisoned them. Neither, however, showed the least fear or despair, nor would they give in or renounce their faith, just as we talked about up here. What I said before is necessary is exactly what President Makaguchi, and died in prison doing it, and what President Toda was inspired by, okay? In a letter to his family from prison, Mr. Makaguchi said, "What I am going through is nothing compared to the sufferings of the Daishonin on Sado." That's how we should really measure our suffering. Is it anything like what Nichiren went through or what President Makaguchi went through? Come on, stop complaining, you wimp. "And I am not the least bit anxious," President Makaguchi continued. "I know I will succeed in changing poison into medicine," which he did because he inspired Josei Toda to come out of prison, even though he died in prison, and create the Soka Gakkai. And because of that, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and Nichiren Buddhism is spread throughout the world as a result of President Ikeda's that came from President Toda. That's the whole thing. Toda's faith came from Makaguchi. Ikeda's faith came from Toda. Our faith comes from one another. We pass it on to people in the future. That's why we got to keep going all the way to the end. Okay, he says here, President Makaguchi even discussed his theory of value with his jailers and interrogators, presenting his arguments on the validity of Nichiren Buddhism and stressing the spirit of his principles of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Some of these individuals actually joined the Soka Gakkai later. The fearless words of conviction spoken by Mr. Makaguchi and Mr. Toda while in prison, serving as the seeds of their faith. At the third memorial, second anniversary in November of 1946 of Mr. Makaguchi's death in prison, Mr. Toda solemnly addressed his late mentor, in your vast and boundless compassion, you let me accompany you even to prison. Such was the tremendous life state of the first two Soka Gakkai presidents who remained undefeated in the face of the harshest persecution. This also conveys the solemn spirit of mentor and disciple in Nichiren Buddhism, a spirit that transcends the bounds of life and death, because we're always born together. The Soka Gakkai is what it is today because of these venerable origins. Everybody's with me? Okay, I'm about halfway through. I'm going to keep going. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, top of page 7. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the fundamental law for attaining Buddhahood. Though back to the Gosho, the teaching I am now propagating seems limited, it is extremely profound. That is because it goes deeper than the teaching expounded by Tentai Dengyo and others. It is the three important matters of the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching. Practicing only the 7 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo seems limited, but since they are the master of all the Buddhas of the 3 existences, the teacher of all the Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions, and the guide that enables all living beings to attain the Buddha way, it is profound. Next, the Daishonin explains the nature of his teaching, which he has expounded at the risk of his life to enable all people to attain enlightenment. First of all, he states, though the teaching I am now propagating seems limited, it is extremely profound. That is because it goes deeper than the teaching expounded by Tentai Dingyo and others. The great teacher, Tentai of China, is said to have mastered the entire body of teachings that Shakyamuni Buddha expounded during his lifetime, what's known as the 80,000 teachings. Concluding that the Lotus Sutra is the essential teaching, expressing the Buddha's true intent, Tentai taught the practice of observing the mind based on the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which he established, which he derived from the teachings of the sutra. The great teacher Dengyo later brought Tentai's teachings back with him to Japan, establishing the Tendai school and promoted the practice of the Lotus Sutra. The Daishonin went further still, presenting an even more profound teaching by revealing the ultimate essence, the fundamental law for attaining Buddhahood, implicit in the lifespan, the Sutra's 16th chapter. That law is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the three great secret laws, or as expressed in this letter, the three important matters of the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the ultimate law by which all Buddhas of the 10 directions and 3 existences attain enlightenment, the fundamental law that activates the Buddha nature of all living beings. Everyone inherently possesses the Buddha nature, bottom of page 7, second column, which is the cause for attaining Buddhahood. But shrouded in delusion arising from innate ignorance, which we also call fundamental darkness, we ordinary people fail to bring forth that inner brilliance because we don't know it's really there. When we embrace the mystic law, sow the seed of Buddhahood, that is, talk about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with others and plant the seed for enlightenment in their hearts, they touch people's lives and awaken the Buddha nature within them. When those who embrace the mystic law sow the seed of Buddhahood. Page 8, top of the first column. In this way, so what did he just talk about there? Did he just say, basically said by chanting? It's not by just chanting. Is it by just chanting to the Gohonzon? No, it's not just by chanting to the Gohonzon. It's about doing that and teaching others, right? So in this way, the correct practice, the Daishonin established the practice of chanting and propagating the 7 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, a practice for oneself and for others, as the method of practice for attaining Buddhahood in the latter day of the law. There is no need to read or recite all the difficult to understand Buddhist scriptures or to master countless teachings. All we need to do is to chant the 7 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with faith and the correct practice. Nichiren Buddhism is a teaching that all people can practice into the eternal future of the latter day of the law, because you'll keep coming back to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in each lifetime as a Buddha from this point on. The Daimoku of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is only 7 characters, so in one sense it may seem to be a limited teaching. But it is the ultimate essence of the innumerable teachings of Buddhism. As the source that gives rise to this vast number of teachings, it is simple. But in terms of its content, it is profound. The Daishonin explains the reason for this from 3 perspectives. Since the 7 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are the master of all the Buddhas of the 3 existences, comma, the teachers of all the bodhisattvas in the 10 directions, comma, and the guide that enables all living beings to attain the Buddha way, the teaching I am now propagating, is profound. It's because he's declaring, without qualifying any further than his declaration, because it's been referred to over and over and over again as the law, is the law, is the law, is the law, culminating and referring to it as the law in the nirvana and the lotus. Okay? He's saying that all Buddhists, Mahevrochana, Amida, all of them, there is no Buddha that does not have as the basis of their enlightenment the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. says, okay, so he says, I am now propagating it as profound. First, we'll qualify those again. The master of all the Buddhas of the three existences means that all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future attain enlightenment by encountering Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and making this fundamental law their foundation. All. Accept that. That's Nichiren telling you that. You should understand that, believe that with your whole heart, and base your life on that. This is, first, the master of all the Buddhas of the three existences means that all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future can attain enlightenment only by encountering Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and making this fundamental law their foundation. Second, the teaching of all the bodhisattvas in the 10 directions means that Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the sole teaching guiding the practice of all the bodhisattvas everywhere as they strive to attain their own enlightenment while working to help others do the same. Why does he throw in there while working to help others do the same? Because that's what makes them bodhisattvas. Okay? Third, the guide that enables all living beings to attain the Buddha way means that Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the compass that equally directs all living beings in the 10 worlds toward Buddhahood. Equally, all living beings. No separation amongst them either. In other words, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the fundamental law that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas regard as their teacher and that leads all people to enlightenment. It is a teaching more profound than any other, period. Buddhism as a way to change our lives. Continuing page 8, second column middle. What is the meaning then of this teaching, bringing forth the fruit or benefit of Buddhahood in the real lives of ordinary people? To explain this, the Daishonin states in a subsequent passage in his writings, these are teachings of prime importance. These are also what is called earthly desires are enlightenment, and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. The principles that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana are inherent in the practice of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Are inherent. Okay, you don't have to focus on turning those sufferings of birth and death into enlightenment. That's not what it's talking about. He's not saying that they're equal to. It says the word equal, but that's a translation of soku. And if you go to, okay, let me read this. This is very cool stuff. Listen to what he's saying. The principles that earthly desires are enlightenment, and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana, are inherent in the practice of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, the fundamental law of enabling all to attain enlightenment, the Daishonin is saying. Earthly desires are enlightenment, top of page 9, first column. Bonosoku Bodai means that the enlightened wisdom needed for attaining Buddhahood manifests within the lives of living beings which are dominated by the delusion caused by earthly desires. The sufferings of birth and death or nirvana, Soji Sokubo Neon, means that the state of true ease and tranquility, nirvana, attained by the Buddha is also manifested in the lives of the living beings who are buffeted about by the sufferings of birth and death. The word are, soku, in these two principles does not mean such opposites as earthly desires and enlightenment are equal, which is why this principle confuses so many people, because they think they can understand it by reading it literally. You can't do that. You've got to study Buddhism. The word are, soku, in these two principles doesn't mean that such opposites as earthly desires and enlightenment are equal. The Daishonin writes that the single word soku corresponds to Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, orally transmitted teachings, page 72. He says, in our lives, as we chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and dedicate ourselves to the mystic law, we transform delusion into enlightenment. Transform it. We take that delusion, we don't get rid of it, we don't have to eradicate it, we transform it. and transform the chains of the suffering of birth and death, aging and sickness into a state of complete freedom, imbued with the four noble virtues of eternity, happiness, true self, and purity, the flips of the four sufferings. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. The flip of that is eternity, happiness, true self, and purity. There is truly no system of practice more dynamic, no philosophy that offers such unsurpassed hope. All of our admirable SGI members already uphold this great teaching of universal enlightenment capable of transforming the realities of their daily lives. And so quickly, because there's a pause there, and I'll still continue, but this is just point 1 from chapter 7, the parable of the phantom city, the orally transmitted teachings, because this is where Daisaku Ikeda just got what he just explained to you is the meaning of that. Point 1, concerning the phantom city Keijo. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word K, or phantom, refers to the element of form, or the body. Okay, so listen to what he's saying here. It's pretty deep. I can't go overboard in explaining it. The word Jo, or city, refers to the element of mind. So he's basically saying, think of the parable, but think of the parable as you. Okay? The phantom city is what I just said. Pardon me. The word K, or phantom, refers to the element of form. The word Jo, or city, refers to the element of mind. The provisional teaching declares that these two elements of body and mind are characterized by impermanence. But the message of the Lotus Sutra is the assertion of that this impermanence is in fact a state of permanent abiding. Do you understand what he's saying? Is a state of permanent abiding. That is, the phantom city is identical with the treasure land already. The 10th world and the 9th world all exist together. Okay? The place where the treasure land is to be found. Okay, pardon. That is, the phantom city is identical with the treasure land, the place where the treasure is to be found. In effect, when Nietzsche and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are gaining enlightenment into the fact that our bodies and minds are the wonderful law itself. Are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo itself, are the original state of itself. Namely, that the phantom city is identical with the treasure land. We are not going to find a Buddha land somewhere else. If we're seeking salvation or happiness outside of right now, we got it wrong. Right. Okay? The 10 worlds are all of them phantom cities. And each of these 10 worlds is a treasure land. Each one of these worlds is a treasure land. Hell is a treasure land. Why? Because Buddhahood is a part of it. There's no such thing as just hell. Right. Hell by itself does not exist. Right. There's no single 10 worlds. All 10 worlds are always contained in all other 10. Right. Okay? Or again, the phantom city is the 9 worlds other than Buddhahood, and the treasure land is the state of Buddhahood. From the phantom city to the treasure land is a distance of 500 yojanas. This distance of 500 yojanas is symbolic of the illusions of thought and desire, or of the dusts and sands that impede religious practice, and of darkness or ignorance. It's just our heads being full of shit. To understand that these 500 yojanas, that's the distance. How full of shit is your head? To understand that these 500 yojanas of earthly desires are the 5 characters of the wonderful law, means to realize that the phantom city is identical with the treasure land. So if you understand what I just said, then you understand there's no separation between any of this. It's all Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In this statement that the phantom city is identical with the treasure land, the single word identical is symbolic of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Each moment of life in the phantom city is a moment of life in the treasure land. We are in the Buddha land already, baby. The provisional teachings assert that the elements of our bodies and minds are characterized by impermanence. The provisional teachings, okay, are characterized by impermanence, but the Lotus Sutra asserts that they are completely abiding. We don't disappear when we die in any way, shape, or form. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo continues within us as karmic influences that remanifest over and over and over and over and over again eternally. Everybody's with me? All right. But the Lotus Sutra asserts that they are permanently abiding. To wipe out all attachment to this concept of impermanence means to wipe out the phantom city. Again, the phantom city is our flesh, our skin and flesh, and the treasure land is our bones. To gain enlightenment into this fact that these two elements of our bodies and minds are the wonderful law. In other words, because what is it, Buddhahood? Is when you look in your mind and you see Buddhahood. Okay? The essential, to gain enlightenment into the fact that these two elements of our minds and bodies are the wonderful law is to grasp the essential substance of the statement that the phantom city is identical with the treasure land. That essential substance is the realization that impermanence and permanence are simultaneous and inseparable. That which accords with changing circumstances, that which is unchanging, these are tranquil and shining in a single moment of life. Kuan is ever present. Beginningless time is ever present. Do you understand how that is? It's all the simultaneity of cause and effect and the fact that you're able to manifest the original state. Okay? If you can manifest the original state, you just transcended those existences. Do you understand? Okay. Yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does anybody understand what I'm saying? You understand? Okay. Each of these moments of life is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. A moment of life in which one exercises a faith that is free of doubt. One should give particular thought to the word identical in the statement that the phantom city is identical with the treasure land. And I have. That's why I read this to you. Okay. Continuing then. Where does page 7? Okay, I read all the way to the bottom here. What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of life? That's a good question. Page 9. Second column. Mr. Toda often spoke about the purpose of life. It's quite common for us to establish goals based on our wishes of future happiness, our plan for the coming year. Goals such as finding a job, getting married, finding a new home, and so forth. Oh, then we call those benefits, right? Mr. Toda said, true. These are all naturally goals we make in the course of living our lives, but viewed in terms of the highest goal, they are no more than a means to an end. Bono Soko Bodai, earthly desires, that's what all those were. Kept you practicing all those years before you realized your essential nature. Do you understand how that works? Okay. True. These are all naturally goals we make in the course of living our lives, but viewed in terms of the highest goal. What's the highest goal? To attain Buddhahood and to convey that means to others. It's not just for you. It's never just about you. If it were, you don't deserve that. But you're the door through which so much other shit passes. You deserve more than you could ever imagine. Do you understand? Yeah. None of us are a finite point. Right. All of us are extension into an ever-widening cone of influence. Yes. True, these are all naturally goals we make in the course of living our lives, but viewed in terms of the highest goal, they are all no more than a means to an end. Put another way, if you don't have an ultimate goal, you can't establish the proper means, because if you don't have something that will sustain you while you're gaining that wisdom, because it's coming from you, it's not coming from anybody but you. There is the ultimate goal of life, and then there is the ultimate goal of life, and then there are the various challenges we face along the way. The supreme and ultimate goal is the grand undertaking of Kosen Rufu. We all said attaining Buddhahood. And then I threw in, no, it's propagating it. Because it's not about you just attaining Buddhahood. It's about everyone, or at least a third of us, right? So it's really about Kosen Rufu, because you can't be a Bodhisattva and then be a Buddha unless you're involved in that process. It's necessary. The supreme and ultimate goal is the grand undertaking of Kosen Rufu. Upholding and spreading Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the great law for attaining Buddhahood, means us, and because of us and others, sharing supreme happiness. Once we are clear about our true purpose in life, once the most important thing for us in our life is to fulfill our mission and to never disgrace the Gohonzon and to attain Buddhahood in our present form, we still have all the other worries. Right. Okay? And we don't just stop thinking about them or going, Gohonzan will take care of me. But once we actually make the goal of Buddhahood and propagation for the sake of Kosen Rufu number one, really, we really don't have anything else to worry about. Yeah. We're taken care of. Once we are clear about our true purpose in life, we can create the best possible value from every challenge that appears along the way. When we are dedicated to realizing the great vow for Kosen Rufu, we can transform everything without exception into a source for creating something positive. This is the true meaning of earthly desires or enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death or nirvana. Innumerable members have proudly demonstrated that this great path of life, this great path of Buddhism, is the sure way to happiness. Continuing on page 10. We have 2 more pages. The modern day laymen and laywomen sent forth by the Buddha from the Gosho. Nevertheless, you became a votary of Lotus Sutra, and as a result, you suffered severe persecutions, and you came to my assistance. In the Teacher of the Law chapter, the Buddha states that he will magically conjure and send the 4 kinds of believers, monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen, for the sake of the teachers of the law. If the layman mentioned here does not mean you, who does it refer to? You have not only heard the law, but have taken faith in it, and since then have followed it without turning aside. How wondrous, how extraordinary. If that is the case, then can there be any doubt that I am the teacher of the law of the Lotus Sutra? Perhaps I also resemble the envoy of the Thus Come One, for I am carrying out the Thus Come One's work. I have nearly spread the 5 characters of the Daimoku, Myoho Rengekyo, that were entrusted to Bodhisattva superior practices when the 2 Buddhas were seated together within the treasure tower. Does this not mean that I am an envoy of Bodhisattva superior practices? Moreover, following me, you, as a votary of the Lotus Sutra, have told others of this law. What else could this be but the transmission of the law? 2nd column, page 10, pardon me. The latter day of the law is described as an age of quarrels and disputes when the pure law will become obscured and lost. It is also a time when the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness are rampant and people's life force is weak. Does that sound familiar to you? If I was going to generalize about this moment right now on earth, I could say right now is a time, an age of quarrels and disputes when a correct understanding has become obscured and lost. It is also a time when the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness are rampant and people's life force is weak. That's truly the state of the world right now. Okay? So that's why if you think Kosen Rufu is something that's way down the road, it isn't. It isn't. It's already happening. It's already in play. Okay? So if you're looking at this as some huge thing that's going to happen in the future down the line, you are missing your opportunity. You are missing your opportunity for eternal happiness. Okay? In such an age when people are afflicted with suffering and when misfortune follows upon misfortune, Nichiren Daishonin challenges the storms of persecutions head on and rose to action to guide humanity to enlightenment. He demonstrated that by propagating the mystic law, which calls forth the wisdom and power of the Buddha within people's lives, it is possible to not only transform our individual karma, but also to fundamentally transform the age of the latter day of the law itself. Citing, that's called Kosen Rufu. That's what he was just talking about. Citing a passage from the Teacher of the Law, the Lotus Sutra's 10th chapter, the Daishonin lauds the pure faith of Shijo Kingo, saying that he is the epitome of the layman, one of the 4 kinds of believers who made offerings to the Teacher of the Law and were dispatched by the Buddha to propagate the law. This is because Kingo showed him to be an exemplary disciple, one of those who have not only heard the law, but have taken faith in it, and since then have followed it without turning aside. The Daishonin further states that if the layman mentioned in this chapter correspond to Shijo Kingo, then can there be any doubt that I am the teacher of the law of Lotus Sutra? The Daishonin represents the teacher of the law of Lotus Sutra, while Shijo Kingo represents the layman. With this statement, Nichiren indicates that the mentor-disciple relationship they share is not limited to this lifetime, but rather is the result of profound causes and a vow from the remote past, as taught in the Teacher of the Law chapter. This isn't all manifesting by chance. If I know for sure I did exactly that. I can't speak for any of you. There's no doubt in my mind that I did that. We, the members of the SGI, have encountered the Daishonin's teachings in the latter day of the law and are striving tirelessly to realize his wish of Kosarufu, while always firmly basing ourselves on his writings. I didn't read that well. We, the members of the SGI, have encountered the Daishonin's teachings in the latter day of the law and are striving tirelessly to realize his wish of Kosarufu, while always firmly basing ourselves on his writings. While always firmly basing ourselves on his writings. We are truly the modern-day laymen and laywomen set forth by the Buddha to fulfill our mission from the remote past. We are the bodhisattvas of the earth, here to do Kosen-rufu in the latter day of the law. Yes. It couldn't be more obvious. Yes. Okay, if you understand that, then if you can really believe it, he's saying, then live this way. Live that way. Don't accept the happy talk that that's the way it is. Actually, live that way. Striving as envoys of the thus come one, which we are doing. The thus come one, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We manifest as thus come ones, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, thus come ones. Returning to Nichiren's letter, middle of page 11, and then we're done. Almost. Returning to Nichiren's letter, the phrase carrying out the thus comes one's work is also from the Teacher of the Law chapter, which states that a person who teaches even one phrase of the Lotus Sutra to another is the envoy of the thus come one, a person who has been dispatched by the thus come one and who carries out the thus come one's work. In the ceremony in the air of the Lotus Sutra, the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and many treasures, sit side by side in the treasure tower. Shakyamuni entrusts Bodhisattva's superior practices, the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, with the law to be propagated far and wide in the evil latter age after his passing. Nichiren Daishonin revealed this law as the 5 characters of the Daimoku, namely Myoho Renge Kyo. For this reason, he reiterates here, based on his identification with Bodhisattva's superior practices, that he is the envoy of the Buddha. In addition, he stresses to Shijo Kingo, the second column, first full paragraph. In addition, he stresses on page 11. In addition, he stresses to Shijo Kingo, who is following his lead and talking to others about the correct teaching as a votary of the Lotus Sutra, the nobility of propagating the mystic law. The law does not spread by itself. Because people propagate it, both people and the law are respect-worthy. And that's from the Gosho Zinshu, so that hasn't even been translated into English yet. As the Daishonin says, no matter how supreme the law is, without practitioners who will propagate it into the eternal future of the latter day, people will not be able to enjoy its benefits. I'll read it again. So Nichiren didn't say, I'm God, I opened the door, done. He said, without the bodhisattvas appearing and taking this on, what I'm talking about is never going to happen. No matter how supreme the law, even the law of the original state, is, without practitioners who will propagate it into the eternal future of the latter day, without the original disciples of the original teacher appearing to fulfill their vow for Kosarufu in the latter day of the law as bodhisattvas of the earth, people will not be able to see, people will not be able to enjoy its benefits because it won't exist. There will be no teachers to propagate it. It can't survive without propagation. It goes against the teaching itself for it to survive without propagation. It must be propagated to survive. Do you understand? It's in the teaching. No matter how supreme the law is, without practitioners who will propagate it into the eternal future of the latter day, people will not be able to enjoy its benefits. Kosen-rufu advances only when there are individuals who teach and transmit the mystic law to others and transform into Buddhas of the original state in accord with the instructions of a correct teacher. Following me, Nichiren, in the passage, following me, you, Shijo Kingo, as a votary of the Lotus Sutra, have told others of this law, refers to the unity of mentor and disciple. Following me refers to the unity of mentor and disciple. Those who strive with the vibrant spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple are true votaries of the Lotus Sutra, true envoys of the Buddha. Even if they communicate to another just a single phrase of the sutra, their actions are infinitely meaningful and they will therefore receive immense benefits. Somebody's talked to me once on YouTube saying, what you're doing is so much more than me. I'm just trying a little bit. There's no such thing as a little bit. There's no such thing as a little bit. Even one phrase is a lot. Even one phrase can be the fulfillment of your mission in this lifetime. To a single individual, you never know, that's the person that's going to become a Buddha, going to save millions of people. Page 12, and then this thing stops finally on page 14. Emulating the example of Shijo Kingo, and I'll make it in an hour and a half. Carry through with your faith in the Lotus Sutra. You cannot strike from the Gosho. You cannot strike fire from flint if you stop halfway. Bring forth the great power of faith and be spoken of by all of the people of Kamakura, both high and low, or by all the people of Japan as Shijo Kingo of the Lotus School. Even a bad reputation will spread far and wide. A good reputation will spread even farther, particularly if it is a reputation for devotion to the Lotus Sutra. Explain all this to your wife, too, and work together like the sun and the moon, a pair of eyes, or the two wings of a bird. With the sun and moon, could there be a path of darkness? With a pair of eyes, no doubt you will see the faces of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions. With a pair of wings, you will surely fly in an instant to the treasure of the land of tranquil light. Continuing with the lecture on first column, page 12. After teaching Shijo Kingo, the noble mission of propagating the mystic law, assuming the identity of being a bodhisattva of the earth, Nichiren underscores the importance of continuous and steadfast faith. Nichiren underscores the importance of continuous and steadfast faith. Carry through with your faith in the Lotus Sutra. One cannot start a fire by striking a flint or rubbing sticks together if one stops before producing a spark. One must continue without stopping until the fire is going. In the same way, the Daishonin teachings, it is crucial to remain constant and steadfast in one's daily practice of Buddhism to prevent any opportunities for devilish functions to gain ground. So if you're blowing off days of chanting, and you got enough faith that you still get back, you still go back, you're not really taitan. You just don't chant every day. You're opening the door for so much shit unnecessarily, and it's completely, you should go like this every day you don't feel like chanting. Seriously, if there are such days. I can't. Luckily, it hasn't always been that way. Hasn't always been that way. I couldn't, now I can't survive. I won't make it. There's too much other stuff hitting me if no, I don't have a choice. The second column, page 12, he stresses that to overcome adversity at life's crucial moments, because that's really the whole thing. That's the win or lose thing I'm always talking about. Overcoming adversity at life's crucial moments is the win or lose reality that we all face periodically. We'll either continue with our faith or that'll be the thing that blew us off the horse. That's what he's talking about. He stresses that to overcome adversity at life's critical moments and to manifest the fruit or benefit of Buddhahood, we must first manifest faith. We must strive continuously and steadily in our Buddhist practice. It doesn't happen because the Buddha genie grants our wish. It's because we created the cause to be Buddhas and be able to manifest it. Next, the Daishonin writes, bring forth the great power of faith. The magnificent power of the Buddha and the power of the law manifest inexhaustibly in the power of strong faith and practice. Summoning up great, strong faith, let us stride forward confidently and serenely toward our great objective. Serenely, I got to work on that one. The Daishonin then calls out to his disciple, be spoken of by all the people of Kamakura, both high and low, or by all of the people of Japan, as Shijo Kingo of the Lotus School. He tells Kingo to become a person praised throughout the land as Shijo Kingo of the Lotus Sutra. In other words, as Nichiren Daishonen's disciple, Shijo Kingo. It is vital that we put Buddhism into practice in our daily lives and in society. To be genuine practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, it is essential that we demonstrate proof of our absolute victory based on faith and win the praise and recognition of others. It is essential. It's really not optional. We promised we would do this. And that's why there's a consequence if we don't. All right, the Daishonen's encouragement to gain renown as Shijo Kingo of the Lotus Sutra is an eternal guideline for us all. Now, would you have all thought that without reading President K to tell you that? I sure wouldn't have. Because I understood exactly what he was talking about with the Shijo Kingo of the Lotus School. He's talking about, like not Tendai, talking Nichiren, but one that we engrave in our hearts and continue to live by. The Daishonen's encouragement to gain renown as Shijo King of the Lotus School is an eternal guideline for all of us, for us all. One that we SGI members have engraved in our hearts and continue to live by, thus showing irrefutable proof of the power of the mystic law in our lives. There is no more noble or wonderful way of life than this. Nichiren adds, even a bad reputation will spread far and wide. A good reputation will spread even farther. A bad reputation quickly becomes known to all. This is even truer of a good reputation. He goes on to say that this is so, particularly if it is a reputation for devotion to the Lotus Sutra. The honor we gain through living our lives in accord with the supreme teaching of the Lotus Sutra shines with unsurpassed brilliance. Like the sun and moon, a pair of eyes, or two wings of a bird, middle of page 13. In bringing this letter to a close, Nichiren instructs Shijo Kingo and his wife Nichi Ginyo to work together in dedicating themselves to their Buddhist practice. The family is the foundation of life and an important base for people's efforts in society. Precisely because this letter focuses on how to put Buddhism into practice in our lives, he concludes it by offering the couple firm but caring advice. He urges the couple to strive in faith in perfect harmony with one another, like the sun and the moon, a pair of eyes, or two wings of a bird. When a couple shares such strong bonds, they will be able to illuminate even the darkness after death. This is important. This is ninth consciousness here. When a couple share such strong bonds, they will be able to illuminate even the darkness after death. See the faces of the Buddhas assembled in the Pure Land of Eagle Peak and fly instantly to the realm in which the Buddha of time without beginning resides, says Nichiren. The Buddha of time without beginning is Nichiren as far as I'm concerned. It's never qualified specifically, but if you understand what, why isn't this where it should be? Hang on. Ninth consciousness right here. Okay. What he's referring to here, and every once in a while Nichiren will talk like this, and it sounds like there's some place like heaven or something. Right? Let me read this again. Will fly instantly to the realm in which the Buddha beginningless time resides. Okay? Hanging out, says Nichiren. In another letter, Nichiren Daishonin commends Nichi Ginyo, who was striving alongside her husband on the noble path of Kosen-rufu as the foremost woman in Japan. The SGI has inherited Daishonin's compassionate spirit to treasure women as embodied in these words. The SGI would not exist without women. Women are the foundation and the base of the SGI, unfortunately. There aren't enough men with the kind of character to have that kind of faith, unfortunately. The nine consciousnesses, I'm going to go to this because this is what he's talking about. Every time he refers to the land of Eagle Peak or anything like that, this is what he's talking about. 9 kinds of discernment. Consciousness is the translation of the Sanskrit Vijnana, which means discernment. The 9 consciousnesses are 1, sight consciousness, 2, hearing consciousness, 3, smell consciousness, 4, taste consciousness, 5, touch consciousness, 6, mind consciousness, 7, mano consciousness, 8, alaya consciousness, and 9, amala consciousness. And amala consciousness, the 9th consciousness, is not taught in the provisional teachings. The Sanskrit is the same for both the sixth and the seventh consciousnesses. The first five consciousnesses correspond to the five senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. The sixth consciousness integrates the perceptions of the five senses into coherent images and makes judgments about the external world. In contrast with the first six consciousnesses, which deal with the external world, the seventh, or mano-consciousness, corresponds to the inner spiritual world. These are the things that are just in your head. Awareness of an attachment to the self are said to originate from the mano-consciousness, as does the ability to distinguish between good and evil. This is the one that hangs people up thinking that they're in a permanent identity when they're not. The eighth, or alaya consciousness, exists in what modern psychology calls the unconsciousness. The unconscious, all experiences of present and previous lifetimes collectively called karma are stored there. The alaya consciousness receives the results of one's good and evil deeds and stores them as karmic potential or seeds, which then produce the rewards of either happiness or suffering accordingly. Hence, it is rendered as a storehouse consciousness in Chinese. The alaya consciousness thus forms the framework of individual existence. The Dharma Characteristics School regards the eighth consciousness as the source of all spiritual and physical phenomena. The summary of the Mahayana school, the Tentai school, the Flower Garland school postulate a ninth consciousness called the Amala consciousness, which lies below the alaya consciousness and remains free of all karmic impurity. This ninth consciousness is defined as the basis of all life's functions. It's the original state. It's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Hence, it is referred to as the fundamental pure consciousness in Chinese. And it's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, so when he's talking about this, he's talking about going to the realm of non-substantiality, where someone that has attained Buddhahood in their present form goes to hang out in non-substantiality. And it's also in that state of non-substantiality, you determine yourself how long you will be there before you come back into a manifest form. That separates it from everybody else. Nobody else gets to pick. Only Buddhas get to pick. All right? Later, in another letter, Nichiren Daishonin commenced Nichiginyo, who was striving alongside her husband on the noble path of Buddhahood as the foremost woman in Japan. The SGI inherited the Daishonin's compassionate spirit to treasure woman is embodied in these words. Mr. Makaguchi once said to a woman, "True Buddhism, the Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin is like the sun, warmly watching over your path through life." Mr. Itoda assured a gathering of women, "You are all certain to become happy because the seed of Buddhahood has been planted in the field of your heart. A precious jeweled tree has been planted there. It will take time for the tree to grow, so patience is important. Those who remain steadfast in faith are guaranteed to become happy. It was Mr. Makaguchi and Mr. Toda's dearest wish that women in particular would be free of suffering and misery, and this is my wish as well. The 21st century is the century of women. Our noble women and young women are at the very forefront of this global trend and actively advance Kosen Rufu. I would like to applaud them with profound gratitude, especially congratulating the Women's Division members on their recent general meetings brimming with the melodies of hope of the new era, and paying my deepest respects to all our sunny mothers of Kosen Rufu, starting with the group leaders in each region." Expanding our humanistic network of the mystic law on page 14, the end. With the opening of a new era of worldwide Kosen Rufu, the spread of the mystic law is proceeding with ever greater momentum, thanks to the strenuous efforts of all of you, our dedicated members. Our humanistic network of the mystic law, built on fostering trust, is spreading not just in Japan, but throughout the world. He didn't say our humanistic organization, okay? Throughout the world. People everywhere are expressing their praise and admiration for the SGI movement. Our proud and honorable reputation for devotion to the Lotus Sutra has spread around the globe, and Shijo Kingos and the Nichiginyos of the Lotus School are emerging everywhere. This is all due to you, my friends, who strive in faith with the spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple, and the high praise and raise high the banner of Soka in the sphere of your respective missions. You are the laymen and laywomen who, on a global scale today, carry out the momentous work of the Buddha. Noble envoys of the Buddha, there is not the slightest doubt that Nichiren Daishonin would praise each of you most highly. The Lotus Sutra's philosophy of respect for human life, based on the principle that we are all Buddhas, is being newly recognized and eagerly accepted as a teaching for all humanity. Countless people are waiting to learn about the mystic law. Countless people are waiting. Kosu was only just begun. The world is waiting for the humanistic philosophy of Nichiren Buddhism. The age is waiting for youth with a noble vow. The future of our planet is waiting for the victory of Soka mentors and disciples, plural on both, mentors and disciples. So we're all going to be busy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was a